So we're getting ready to start. So I don't know if you guys still need to make noise. Okay. I just was giving you a heads up.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Are y'all ready for us to start?
Yeah.
I guess since everybody waited, if you want, after it's all over, I'll give you a sticker.
You give us a what?
A sticker.
Oh.
I mean, for people who like stickers. Can they hear okay? Can y'all hear okay? Is this better?
Okay, there we go. Is there anybody?
This is just us.
There's a whole lot of chairs. Is there more people coming?
This is just us.
Oh, we don't need all these chairs either.
We don't need all those
We
chairs.
can space out.
We can,
We
yeah.
can space out. I love movies too.
Yeah?
So, giving everybody a moment to get situated, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Lawana Richmond, and I'll be moderating. When I first started, I was like, women in comics and publishing. I don't create comics and don't publish, but actually I do because, and we'll talk about that, because nowadays everybody who wants to publish can just publish by clicking a mouse. So, oh wow. And so I'm trying to give everybody a chance to get situated. I also produce AfroCon art by her sister. And yeah, and I'm the founder of the Black Speculative Arts Movement San Diego chapter. I think that's enough stuff for today. And so today we're going to talk about women in comics and publishing and what that's like, what it's about, specifically Black women. And this is going to be fun because I think what I like is when we have like a variety of perspectives and viewpoints, and our panelists are going to tell you a little bit about themselves, but I will tell you they bring a variety of perspectives and viewpoints.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to start with Mia Bunn. She's going to tell us. So my first question is, what do you do and who are you?
Oh, that's a good question, and I do so many things. My name's Mia Bunn. I'm an artist. I'm also a mother. I've been an artist for many, many years, ever since I was a child. Went to school for it, originally fine art and design, and that was back in the 80s, okay? So that kind of, I'm dated here. All right, so been painting murals for 20 years. I got really bored with fine art. I got bored with painting and drawing. So at age 50, I decided I wanted to animate. I wanted my art to tell stories, and I didn't want to take my art so seriously. I just wanted to draw goofy and relax and just draw anything. And so, I didn't even get my Instagram account until 2017 or 2018, my first and when I was surprised to see all of the bullshit that was coming through my Instagram feed, right? I'm like, oh my God, and then of course my kids are all, knee deep in, living in that rap culture. So rap culture, Instagram, the stuff showing up on my Instagram feed, that gave me something to talk about. It was absurd to me, and it was funny too. So I reached into my dark humor side and decided I would invent characters who are everything that annoyed me on Instagram, or some characters that I would naturally talk shit about. So I give you Da Fuck. And so Da Fuck is about the ratchet misadventures of two strippers, Lexi and Pimpsess, who are on a quest for easy money, clout, and getting lit. It's about Instagram nonsense, SoundCloud rappers, bigger butts, and IG hoes. So that's, the book. I have four issues, 3 single issues, and then the graphic novel, which contains the 4th. And Da Fuck is 3 years old, going on 4 years. It's been doing pretty well. It does well because the tragic Gen Zers, in fact, all Gen Zers, they all relate to it in some way. They love it. Even millennials. I mean, it's my biggest audience are millennials and Gen Zers. Like, Da Fuck Instagram blew up from it. It's funny. It just makes people laugh. It makes people laugh at themselves. I have gotten messaged by people, just random people saying, "Oh my God, Lexi is me." You know, they relate to these characters. You know, even though Lexi's trash. You know, but they love her. So I'm just gonna stick with it and keep it going, keep the stories rolling. I get lots of my material comes from just everywhere I go, on the street, in the grocery store, in the mall, especially in the mall. That's it. I mean, you have any other questions?
You gotta go down.
Okay, all right. Okay. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
Hi everyone, my name's Antoinette Van Slytman. I'm an artist, writer, and entrepreneur. I'm also a literary assistant and co-founder of Broken Child Studios. We're a multimedia company that specializes in art, writing, and film. So I also do a lot of stuff as well. I've been an artist for like the longest time, but my passion is really spread out through all three of those: film, art, and writing. But we specialize in producing graphic novels that talk about the representation that we didn't get to see growing up, especially with Black Tina women. So we talk about Black and brown women in history and the erasure that they've experienced in their contributions to activist movements, social movements. Representation is really what we stand for. Seeing all the different spectrums of women's of different ethnicity, cultures, we come in all shades, and our history is super powerful and important that like young girls get to see it. So that's really what we stand for. And I express that through my art, my writing, and we have a lot of different stories that we're producing right now. And that's a little bit about me.
My name is Cheryl Morrow. I am a legacy publisher. We've been publishing since 1959. And one of the wonderful things about I'm glad that this panel exists, and Lawana's a wonderful, dear colleague of mine, and so is yourself. And I have been glad to have met you, right? Yes. And so this is a very important conversation because this is also the future of media. And I was the first Black news to go digital into another genre in 2010. And so had the room and the newspaper, you know, assets to go into a future, and then just dabbling into what that is. And so also the other component is that I think it's important for brands to make sure that they have a digital media, a magazine, a print, in all aspects, so we can control the content, which controls the narrative, and to be able to put it in a nice package into, whatever format or media that particular media is, but it is also part of anybody's brand, and I think it's just a great industry.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. So we got like a bunch of smart women here. So my next question, I'm gonna try to mix it up so we don't start in the same place. And Mia, I'm gonna say, just be cautious to not answer all of my questions in one question.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But a lot of my questions,
You've
you've already answered, but you'll be free to elaborate on them as we go forward.
Okay.
Okay, so, since this is Black women in publishing and in comics, a lot of times it's a boys' club. Quite often I find myself on a panel or in a room talking about these things and look around and I'm the only one with boobs. So my question is, for you, what is your word of encouragement to someone who may feel like, this isn't a space for me because I'm a woman? And then the other part is, what are some of the unique advantages you think you bring to this space with that perspective, with that, that energy that you bring? I'm going to start with...
Well, I got the microphone here. Okay, I'll pass it on down. When, I have a unique perspective, or just because of how I started, and to understand demographics, I think that we don't realize that all markets are female. most people will buy, and because of the deciding energy of families and how people interact with information. And it always has an aspect of femaleness because you're very influential in homes and at your work and at your friends. You are the epicenter of the influential buyer. So you're always, if you can be mindful that the statistics and the finance and all the economic aspects are always very, female oriented. And so that is it's a confidence if you know the demographics and you understand where everything is piped in. Most products that you'll run into in TV are very female oriented. So, it may look like that in probably gathering at conferences and conventions and workshops and seminars, but when the rubber hits the road, as my father would say, you will begin to respect that the demographics and the money and the power and all those things are really pipelined through women. And once you really educate yourself on those real foundationals, you really have to just step on out there and make your mark. That's it.
So yeah, I kind of briefly mentioned the erasure that Black women have experienced and continue to experience in not just the graphic novel and publishing industry, but in a lot of different industries. Specifically, I learned a lot about that during my studies in activist movements, how a lot of female activists, you won't even hear about them very often. And I'll talk to other people amongst the Black community, and they'll know about Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, but not a lot of people know about Kathleen Cleaver, my personal hero, Elaine Brown, And then people might know about King Tut, but not about Hatshepsut, the first female pharaoh, or Queen Nzinga, Amani Reines, Asante Wak. The list goes on. And I personally had to do a lot of digging for that information. And so whenever I go to events, I make sure that, it's important that Black women know about their history and know about, women, we go through a lot of different, erasure, and not as much talk happens when it comes to, the contributions that Black women go through and contribute to things. Especially for Black women, we have two knocks against us, being women and then being a woman of color. And that personally inspires me extremely when I learn about that and everything that Black women have accomplished despite it. Standing beside Black men and accomplishing so many things. For me, that's what empowers my work and inspires me to tell these stories, because these women deserve their stories to be highlighted and spoken about. And that's really what our mission statement is for Broken Child Studios. And come to think of it, whenever I talk about the film industry, because I do want to get into film, I see movies like Space Jam or the Spider-Man with Miles Morales, and I think Black men are starting to get that representation, where little boys can see themselves being heroes. And then I'm always on the side and saying what about the Black girls? Where's the Black women of that? And I want to see more Black women behind, not just in front of the camera, but behind it. I want to see more Black women at the meetings, having a seat at the table, not just at the table, but their own table, building their own empire of just Black female media, because our history is super important and it hasn't even been touched on that much yet. And I'm just so excited for that movement to begin, right? Because it's starting, it's not there yet, but I think once it happens, it's just gonna be incredible, and I'm super excited for it.
Okay.
Okay, so the question was, being a Black woman in these spaces, quite often we're underrepresented, so we may be the only one in the room. What is that like for you? What are the challenges? And then what are the unique advantages that you feel you bring into the space as a Black woman? Yes.
Okay. Personally, since I created my comic book and started going to events, I noticed that there's the small handful of women, Black women, comic creators at any event. There's just, probably usually under 5. And I've seen, the crowds often pass right by and they will stop at the booth with the traditional male superhero. And that is what I see, just again and again and again. However, yes, I figured it out. I have to compete with these guys. So yes, I have to work it. I have to work a little harder. So brighter colors. I had to strategize. Bigger display, brighter colors, brighten my own colors, get louder, be animated, be funny. And next thing you know, I'm bringing in, the crowd is coming to my table now. So I think, there's challenges, but there's always a way. You can work with it. There's nothing, I can't really, I can't change the mind of the audience, of the public. I can't, they're gonna want what they want. And if they're looking for male superheroes, they're gonna look for male superheroes. The one thing I do have that's different is that I don't have superheroes. Okay, you know what I have. Some of y'all heard me. Okay, I'm not gonna say it here, but I don't have superheroes, and that's where it's different. I think people are hungry for something that's not always about somebody with powers. Come on, how many powers can somebody have? Often all these superheroes have this. You might have 5 superheroes with the same power. That's getting monotonous. People would like to relate to something that's actually really happening. So I created stories invented characters and stories, urban, comical stories that are actually people can relate to. It is funny. Okay, yes, the book is about tragic Gen Z culture. That's real. That's going on. Okay, everybody has a coming of age kid in home who's a little bit lost. Okay, everybody has one, right? And so this is what I'm selling, and it works. It draws them to me because they relate to it.
And let me just add, I think it's the responsibility to Black news as a whole to get these narratives about authors and artists like yourself. Has to have a commitment, because we don't have cartoon and graphic novel departments in Black newspapers anymore. We don't, and so we have to have relationships with people of color, newspapers and magazines, and to make sure that we have spaces for you. And being able to give equity with the space with male-oriented or male ownership of graphic novels or an artist, but to also equal the playing field with female artists and female characters and superheroes and the tragic, social media kings and queens, okay? And I do think that there is enough content, and I think that even though women are such a pivotal part and important part of society, but I don't think the media is trusting that the female essence is profitable. And I think that the independent media, such as myself, can just take much more risk and to create that equity.
Okay, so this dovetails into something that came up yesterday on the panel when we were talking about being in business and comics, and we talked about the media and how the media is like really quick to cover ratchetness, tragedy, trauma, and when good things are happening like this, the response, kind of varies. And for this particular con, there was a lot of, CBS, Fox, KUSI, KPBS. There was some coverage, but the thing we were looking for was the Black media coverage. And there's the after the fact, because it's written and you have to write about it after you see it. And then there's the this is happening and this is exciting. And we, for example, we talked about how the Batman movie has so much coverage and everybody's talking about it, but it doesn't really need a lot of help. So I guess my question for you is, what are some of the stories that you see, being a publisher, writer, content creator, that are happening right in front of us right now that aren't being told? I know, Tony, you've talked a lot about, Antoinette, sorry, a lot about erasure. And so my question is, what are some of the stories that you would like to see, either to counter the narrative or even just stories that aren't really getting the exposure that they should? And I'd like to start with Antoinette.
Yeah, so kind of like how I mentioned before, historical figures. I personally love history, and I grew up reading a lot about these women's stories. And for me, I feel like that inspiration and empowerment is very much what we need for little black girls right now, black, brown women everywhere. So definitely some historical figures who did not have their moment to shine in the media. Because, black women, we have so many stereotypes that we have to deal with, Jezebel stereotypes, the hypersexualization of the female figure is still something that's going on right now. Besides that, I kind of want to see stories of just black women just being black women, because we're superheroes in real life, but I also want to see us, with different narratives, with that speculative power that we all love, because imagination's endless. And I think, we could totally tap into that, but draw from the black female experience, because, women, we bring a whole other thing to the table that no one's seen before. So personally, I would love to see that, but also the historical fiction side of it as well.
So wait, before you pass the mic.
Okay.
Don't you write science fiction?
Yeah. Yes, that's true. So that is probably why, as a writer, I kind of dabble into fantasy and sci-fi right now. But I draw actually some history and different cultures that I don't see growing up when I was reading, because I was an avid reader, and I never saw these stories besides women in poverty, the single mother narrative. It was kind of the same thing, and I wanted to see black women controlling their own narrative and being the heroes for once. So like the great Toni Morrison once said, if there's a book you want to read but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. So that is what I am doing.
I would like to see more stories, or read about more stories of the journey, like a young black woman's journey, like just real life, like the struggle, like what is it like? What is it, what are the things that you have to try? What do you have to do to survive? Like it's not easy to live in the city in California, even in, are you staying at home with your mom? What do you get kicked out? What do you have to do to pay rent? How many people do you have to live with? Just those real struggles, like how many jobs do you have to have? What kind of jobs are you taking? Are you getting any benefits? These kind of stories. I want some real, like, gritty, nitty-gritty, real shit stories. That's what I like to hear.
Keep that one. Oh, yeah. Let's be honest. I have had the luxury of being able to be extremely futuristic with my publication, and growing by 17,360 just like to 2021. And I have to say that just the challenges of being able to compete, and when you let go of that competitiveness about your business, you are then inviting yourself to have a different conversation. What news do I want? What do I want my demographic to read about? And once a publisher understands that I don't want to read what comes through my newswire, or comes through, or what's on Yahoo, or what's on Huffington Post. And so you got to be brave if you want to deal with artists like yourself. And because we don't really we're dealing with the dollar, right? And we're chasing that. And I have to say that when I broke away from that business model, the independents and the creatives and the real, like, organic kind of information, not news, because we don't even know what news is, and if you're not informed, news doesn't matter. So it doesn't. I have the power to be able to talk about and to showcase anyone that I wish, and that is turning your own business model around, making sure that you have a commitment to what you want. And I think that we don't, and two, Black Press does not have a council. So we don't come to the table on one accord and say, we're going to have a graphic novel department and section. We're going to be committed to making sure that we bring artists up. And just like sometimes radio stations break records, right? Or you have these influencers, right? Well, there is to me that is the kind of effort, group effort, organization that needs to happen. So making sure that, because one of the things that I am always committed with the organizer of Black Comics Day is that I become a media partner. But then at that point, it doesn't become about ads. It doesn't become about money. It becomes about the force behind what it is that you're doing, so we can actually make it as big as Comic-Con if we want to. But you need the media's commitment to do that. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Wow. I mean, so much. My mind is racing because on one hand, I'm thinking about the questions that I had on my list, but there are new questions that are, and so one of the things when we talk about the power of publishing and the power of being a content creator and creating stories, I don't know if you all saw recently, there was a meme where it was like they showed clips from news anchors all over the country. And they were all saying, they weren't just reporting the same news, they were using the exact same language verbatim to report on a story. Almost as if they all got the same script, which I'm guessing they probably did. And, to get through that noise and make sure that those stories that we want to see happen. What are some things that you recommend? Because I believe that we're in an age where everybody has the power to create content and tell the stories they want to see. When you quoted Toni Morrison, that we're in an era now where if you want to, you could write a book, push it out electronically, and see if anybody reads it. I mean, of course, you got to promote it and stuff, but what are some of the things that you think people in the audience who have an interest in publishing or creating content should either know or consider as they start or move along that journey?
The new book is the digital device. And if you are interested enough, I think you then go buy the book. And because people's time is in a hyper Big Apple moment now, you must have time to actually sit down and write a book. And then because now the definition of a book is what now? It's really foggy. And so if you had, now I think the book is just a collection, like you said, of diaries and moments, and just a collection. Now where you put that, regardless if you put it on paper and make me buy it in terms of a tangible or a non-fungible token, or now it's a digital flip book, or if it's just pages and you're just doing, you this on while you're, commute or whatever, you're doing. But I see the future in terms of making sure that all your information, especially how does it get to me, so I can push it out to 17,000 people. Like, you're so divorced from a press release at this point. Like, we don't even know what a press release is now. So when things are being transformed, we have the gift and the power to drive it to where Cheryl, I'm going to communicate with you and I'm going to just send you and now it's a DM. I mean, we get information to each other in so many fast lightning bits. But it does have to have formal, because then the formal training of a press release, the what, the when. And it was a friend of mine, because he just started communications company, and he had all the details, but where. So all the press went someplace else, and I just think that if we can just slow down enough to kind of reorganize and get a one, and I know that you guys are independent publishers. I'm publishing for 17,000 people who are expecting a specific piece of information, in their inbox. And so if you have something to communicate with me, it's relationships again, and making myself available.
I need your card.
Right, and maybe just making in the relationship, because I've known you since you were a little girl, right? And so, and it's just the whole relationship, and I think that can really improve. So we can have a commitment to make sure that, information to you is money. If it comes out in a book sale, then, right? Okay.
All right, who wants to go next? The mic. So basically, any tips, advice you might have for someone in the audience who's
Well,
I'm just a new publisher. I have a lot to learn. This is the only thing I've ever published, and it's self-published. I only know of a couple of independent publishing. I used Comics Wellspring. I used this is just comic books. So I don't really know too much about publishing a book. I do have, it is available on Amazon, or you can get it on, but I can't tell you much on that. I don't have enough knowledge.
So I'm in an interesting situation because I self-publish, but I also work in traditional publishing as a literary assistant. But the advice that I would give would work on both ends. So definitely be business-minded, understand business. It really does help in the long run because, I work with authors a lot who have agents to represent them, and they think because they have an agent, they don't have to worry about contracts with their publishers. They don't have to worry about understanding the language, royalties. And because of that, there's a lot of scamming that does go on. So whether you're indie or you're in the traditional route, always understand your industry. Make sure you do research, understand the competition, and then ask yourself why with everything you do. And from that, you should have a mission statement. Because at the end of the day, you may always have content, but people will be drawn in by your purpose, your mission. Why? Why are you doing the things you do? What do you stand for? And from that could serve as your foundation. And then, of course, networking. Like just being at Black Comics Day for these weekend, I've met so many great people and have networked with a lot of great people. So that always works out in the long run as well. And collaborating as well, it's definitely helpful, but be business minded because you may have the creative skill sets, but if you don't understand business, how money works, then you might not be able to get to that place where you want to be, especially with distribution, book chains. There's just a whole lot to learn. I'm still learning right now, but knowing your rights is super important as in any industry. And that's really my advice.
okay.
And let me just add, before when you have these fabulous products, I don't think sometimes you think about, are you ready for news? Do you have pictures of your covers? Do you have backs? Do you have great intros? Great excerpts? Are you ready for that big boom, that time for someone to be able to? Because once one wire or one newspaper does it, somebody's going to copy, and then they're going to cut and paste, and then you're going to say, oh, I left something out. Oh, so there is a service that when an author or any product, any brand, I will always tell them before I even, you would think that I wouldn't even care, but I do care. What is your intent before it goes out? Because, people are going to want to buy it, or they're going to want to click, or they want to, press buy now. Do we have the best cover? Did you extract the right excerpt? What is it about before we do that? So sometimes you have to be ready for the flux of what you're asking for, because as soon as you go out in front of the public or anybody's readers. because I think that those characters, are brandable, not just the book. Is Black Tina can be extracted out of the book and actually take on a life of her own. That's just what I suggest.
All right, so I think I want to give you an award for being my most inspirational panelist, because you keep saying things that make me get back on track. And so generally with everything that I do, and Cheryl brings it up too, talking about purpose, I always start with like why, because I find myself personally with like all these different things that I could do, and I've had to ask myself, well, why am I doing this? Because why will tell me whether or not it's something I need to keep doing or not something I need to stop doing. Been finding a lot of things I need to stop doing. But my question for each of you is, what is your why? Like, what is the thing that drives you to do this?
Oh, good question.
Well, this is how this is how I vent. I'm venting the dark side of my comedy here, and I have a lot to say about the things that are happening, with our youth, and this is sort of like a satire comedy, kind of poking fun at it, giving you a comical look into it, instead of being complaining about it or shooting at it. I'm shooting jokes about it. So this is basically people often use, if it's a comedy or a funny comic, it's usually because you're venting, so I'm using the comedian in me, but I'm using dark comedy to just give you a product. So why do I do it? I have something to say, and this is how I get to say it. And it's just an expression. I want to make you laugh while I say it. That's all.
So why? For me, the reason why is, thank you, so that no other Black woman has to grow up not seeing themselves reflected in the media, so that no other young Black girl, Latina girl, thinks of themselves as being unattractive because all they see is white girls on television screens, in books, in movies, in any industry, so that, Black girls can see themselves, being heroes on the screen, being themselves, being the people who wield magic, being beautiful, but also being flawed, so that no other Black girl has to feel like they're not light enough to be considered beautiful, or that their hair texture is the wrong way, so that Black women can be themselves, and then they can see their heroes being highlighted everywhere. That's why, and that's what Broken Child stands for.
I got one word: money. But to widen that out, the creative process is not a poor business. And just because when people say I'm a creative, or a graphic novelist, or or a graphic artist, photographer, or whatever, we are all doing it for cosmic compensation. You want to be able for it to feed yourself and to live a great life and to be able to have that success. That's when you can then accumulate, and then we can create more Marvels, more DCs, and we don't have to be stuck to only one way or this way, and then everyone's trying to get to this place where whatever, because we really, it's taken us 2,000 years to even define success. We don't even know what that is, but we do know when we do what we love, it doesn't feel like work. And we do know that the moment you do something and you like it and you say it's good, there is no amount of money that can, fill that hole. And so my goal is to give that structure, to offer and to put it into a package to where it can have movement and have legs. Someone can experience it. Someone can say, I like that. I want some of it. I'm going to pay them for it, and that's just a beautiful thing, right?
Well, I could hear the OJs in the background in my head. All right, so I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions. A lot of times when I do panels, I have so many questions of my own that the audience doesn't get an opportunity. I see a hand up.
I have a question, Antoinette.
Yes.
That kind of got me thinking about this. Just bear with me. Looking at the political landscape, there is, without question, one group in America that is driving political success, and it's black people. If it wasn't, they would not be trying to suppress our vote. With that in mind, if we can control politics, winning or losing depends on how we vote. How can you take that power and expand your influence? Because it seems to me, if we are creating and driving the political apparatus right now, there is power to get the narrative out. So how do we help you empower what you want to do more of? Because the power is there. So that would be essentially for the panel, whether it's your words that got me thinking about it.
See, there you go, being all inspiration.
That's a great question. So this is why I was saying networking is very important, and that the community comes together and we collaborate, and it's also really important that we learn how to define power, because, you know, politics, it can be a little tricky, and it's always important to remember there's always someone behind the curtain who's really in control of those certain scenarios, you know, who's distributing what, you know, who has final say, and who has a seat at the table, you know. Like, for example, what percentage of those people in political power are actually black women compared to black men? And if we don't have women's voice at that table, you know, women's narratives aren't being told. And that's really important to, when it comes to the black community, if the women aren't getting their stories told, then, you know, we're really leaving half of the equation out. But regarding that power that you're referring to, I feel like if that was brought to the table within the creative industries of like black entertainment and media, that would definitely become, I think, very universal and essential for like black businesses, black commerce, having more people in different areas putting their heads together. That's how businesses are made, that's how empires are created. And I think, like Cheryl was touching on, it's really important to understand how money works and like how we can network and really put our heads together to make that happen.
So I'm not actually a panelist, but I might have a thing or two to say about that. So, I mean, first of all, I think we need to take note of the fact that most of the elections in recent years have been decided largely through the advocacy, lobbying, and hard work of black women. At the same time, once upon a time, we used to call it the Bradley effect, where people would love a candidate, but then when it was time to vote, they would not vote for the black person. Now we're seeing black women who are making great strides and making sure that people are being empowered, have the right to vote, are informed, and then they're not being supported. Here in California, we have black women who are making the decision to disengage. Recently, Autumn Burke resigned. We have Taisha Brown, who was the chair of the Black Caucus for the California Democratic Party. She resigned. Just last week, I was on a call with the chair of the Sacramento County Democratic Party, who is a black woman, and she has not decided to resign, but we have commiserated on the experience of being a black woman in the political arena. Most recently, Black African Women Rising, a Democratic club specifically for black women, was chartered under the leadership of Elise Pipkin Allen. Raise your hand. I think the stories that we tell help people. Stories and content drive the culture, and it helps people understand what they're ready for, what they're prepared for, so that they can see it. At the same time, at some point, people have to stop being afraid of black women. Sometimes the power that we use to help lift, support, and create space for other people frightens people, in the sense of, when we are actually in leadership, are we going to hold them accountable in a way that they're not ready to be held accountable? That's just my 2 cents.
Oh, still the same question? Oh, about how we can,
Politics, narrative, creating.
how to, I'm sorry, I missed your question. Because we went off on a different subject. We got into politics, and I was like,
That was the
question.
oh, okay. Your question?
Yeah.
Politics?
If you don't want to answer, we can go to Cheryl.
Oh, sure. Because I'm not really, like, I don't,
It's okay.
okay, yeah, in politics.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of contrast there. I will say that I am committed, one, to the power of the cartoon and the power of satire can really turn someone's, or at least allow us to ask better questions. Okay? And you don't really see a lot of I would say the Afro or black narrative, as it can be quite politically influential, right? And also to add on that, to me, the ultimate power in media is the power of the headline. Because as soon as that digital device is 5 minutes, because you only got 20 seconds, you only got 30 seconds, you only got really to have them press and click and open that article or that post or whatever the case may be. But devoting black news to be a lot more probably risky, less status quo. Don't copy and paste headlines. Make sure that you understand your audience, and to make sure, I want to make sure that I twist that to make sure that, I'm going to be more influential to your interest. And that is what makes that those particular, articles and artwork and be able to get into the political arena to be influential according to that democratic's interest. And that is a great question, my brother. Great question.
Do you want me to go to the next question, or you want to?
Sure,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So,
Is there a particular female character, whether she's a hero or a villain or an anti-hero that you love, and would probably like to see more of the public to see like in media or TV or movies?
so I'm gonna exercise my license and say my favorite character is Orinthia Blue. And in terms of superheroes and superpowers, I still haven't figured out what her kryptonite is, but she has the ability to manifest whatever she chooses to manifest. And I think the power of manifestation is like a superpower that transcends time and space.
I will say that just the challenge of being able to get into artists like yourself and other ones to be able to make our political characters, the real life ones. Can you imagine? Because in a kind of comic verse, they can get a little more edgier. And to me, to have conversations with artists and say, can I have a comic strip to where Stacey Abrams is actually telling off and actually wants to say what she wants to say when she wants to say it, so we can really actually make up our mind what we want to do? Yeah, right. But here we go again. I think that black media needs to, and I'm making myself accountable, and to be able to say, I want, can the fuck get into the political, arena and say this and that and this and that? We make an imaginary world because it provokes other questions. Knowledge begins not with answers, but with better questions. And I think that this industry can allow us to. So I don't have a character. I think that I just want to provoke the action of being able to have different satire. So then, just like
Satire is very political.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Satire
is very political. I mean, I use satire in the fuck. So it's all a matter of how, which direction we take the story. What do we make happen? We can actually, stir up questions just from whatever, the narrative in the story, how it goes along. We can stir up a lot of questions just from conversation. All of the topics that we can bring up in a conversation. Yeah, I mean, you've watched Family Guy, you've seen American Dad. That's very political. When you watch all of those Fox Network cartoons, I mean, they're all extremely politically driven. So that's, in fact, I am trying to pitch that as a cartoon, an Adult Swim cartoon. So, once a team is assigned to this, there's going to be a lot of comics involved in deciding how the story goes and the jokes told. But jokes carry political questions. They make you ask questions. They make you start thinking a certain way. So yeah, it's definitely it's politically driven.
So I don't have a character, but I will say one name, Kathleen Neal Cleaver. She was the first female member of the Black Panther Party of the 1960s, Minister of Communication, mother, Yale graduate, and a professor of law, and my hero.
Okay, my favorite character, well, she was black. My favorite character was Catwoman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love Catwoman so much, and I think
The Eartha Kitt.
Eartha Kitt. And now I really, and I'm happy to see her however she's depicted, but I really, really would like to see her as a black character, like permanently in all the comic books. I just love everything about her. She's dynamic. She doesn't have any, actual superpowers, just like Batman. She's a vigilante. That's her alter ego. She's just badass. That's it.
All right, so since we're getting close to time, before we go in, I'll take more questions, but I want to make sure that I get your socials. For people that want to follow you or get in touch with you, where can they find you? We'll start.
Okay, so if you use Instagram, pull out your phone, type it in, D as in dog, A, 2 underscores, F as in Frank, U, umbrella, Q, number 1. That's Instagram. For Facebook is DA-FUQ ?
So we're also on Instagram. You can follow us at Broken Chalice Studios. So that's BROKEN Studios, STUDIOS. Oh, did I miss Chalice? Oh, sorry. I skipped Chalice. CHALICE. Broken Chalice Studios.
And, my name is Cheryl Morrow. You can Google me. I mean, I'm not really hard to find. But San Diego Monitor News.com, SDMonitornews.com, and my name on both social, IG and Facebook and TikTok and all that good stuff.
We also have a table inside if y'all want to check out some of the art.
And Mia has a table as well. You still have a table. Yes. All right, so for me, it's drlawana.com, DRLAWANA.com. Or, some people know that my other name is Firiali, spelled F like family, IRYALI, and that's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I want to go back to the questions.
Okay, could you share with the audience what, if any, challenges that you all experienced in the industry?
The challenges we experience in what? In the industry. In the industry. Oh. Shoot. Yes, financial challenges. It's always money. I'm not really making a lot of money with selling comics. I'm making the money back. So the main reason I'm creating comic books is really it's how I'm marketing my brand. I'm marketing to fuck. I want people to get to know about this cartoon that's coming soon. So I want the cartoon. The book is great, but I want the cartoon. So yes, I'm selling the book to get it in your house. Okay? I want it in your house, so it reminds you every day that it's there, and you've got to, look forward to this cartoon. So, so every time I sell a book, I'm just, I'll make the money back. I'm just going to dump it back. I'm going to buy more books. I'm still going to be broke. So, so yes, it's just the money comes in, the money goes out. The money is the biggest challenge.
For me, I think the challenge is being a creative and a business owner, because those are two very different hats, but you have to have both of them in order to run a successful business, especially with graphic novels. So yeah, definitely having to put on different hats, understanding your industry, your audience, all that stuff, because at the same time of loving your work, you also have to understand the numbers, which is not so fun, but it's super necessary.
Well, challenges. From how I interact with the industry, and not as an artist, but as a publisher, and a publisher of other clients' products. I think my challenge is I spent 19 years in Harlem, in New York City, and I think my challenge is to be able to supply enough services so we can have the big city markets, like markets of New York, so we can have the agencies, the branding agencies, and we can have all the supporting services that artists like you need. And being able to, San Diego's a big market. We always talk about other big markets, but it is time for us to have urban agencies so we can have these kind of conversations about when you really want to go to the next level, when you want to take something elsewhere and you want to discuss it with someone who is in the creative process, like with you, and want you to take your whatever elevation process that is, right? For someone to be able to see it in the finish line as if it has already happened with you. So then you work yourself backwards and then be able to create that. That's definitely my challenge.
So,
you're artists. And you're with businessmen. Actually, two that I know. And up and coming businessmen. Our history is everyone has made money off of our art. So it has nothing to do with the art part. It has to do with business.
Absolutely.
And as you continue to create your products, your vision, it is knowing that business, learning that business that will protect you. I want to, his name is, I'm blocking on his name. He's a famous actor. And he went to Harvard and he majored in law. And when he goes around and lectures to students, because he's an artist, they say, oh, that was a waste of degree. Hill Harper. Thank you. Hill Harper. And they said, that's a waste of degree. And he said, no, it wasn't. He said, because I can read and understand every contract that I sign. As artists, we have to be more whole in our vision of ourselves. It's just information. And that can be really boring, but it can save your...
It's a lot of work. It really is. It's just
And build a
marketing.
dream team. You don't have to know everything. Is that right?
Absolutely. And you actually only want to know what you want to know anyway. But let me just say this, because what most people don't know, that there's a woman named, it's Sophia Stewart.
Yeah,
And we talked about law, and I actually went to just read the law that I needed to know. Because I don't need to know extra stuff that I don't need to know. I only want to know what I want to know. But I will say, it's unfortunately that most contracts, if you don't understand it, it really is just, a bunch of hogwash. Because all at the end of the day, you bring something, you bring your jacks, you bring your ball. And we're going to do this or that. It's very cut and dry. But I will say, you're right. And I think that the whole hand-holding in the process of an agency takes you slow, so you can see everything that you need to see in your universe And then as you grow in it, you take advantage of it, and then success is actually very easy. Mistakes are actually very hard once you are prepared and you have the knowledge.
And mistakes are just a take, and you can learn from them, and they become, building blocks. I just want to add that the hardest part, I think, in terms of being a woman in a male-dominated space, is that your perspective is different, and your vision is different, and quite often getting people to see the thing before you make the thing, you touched on that, is often hard because they think it's like everything else that they see all the time until they experience the thing that you made manifest. For example, with AfroCon, it is not a comic con, it is not Comic-Con, but it includes comics, and it's really about consciousness and elevation. And describing that to people can go into the woo-woo land, and then when they're there, they're like, wow, this feels great. Another question.
Yeah, so I have a question regarding marketing and reaching to other markets. It's always hard enough for me, like what we want, and now I know it's what I noticed. I mean, I'm a books, which I did. But in Europe, I mean, I grew up in Denmark, and you don't have any women there. You have their, kids, kids only, or for women. Like the stories I read was about the successful women, black, white women. So when it comes to money, I feel like marketing, business, don't look at your market as only here. Like the black market is huge. I mean, we have so many metropolis in Africa where women want to read, comics. I work with young ladies all over Africa. They can definitely tap into what you're trying to sell to them. So definitely when it comes to money, I feel like we need American comic books or just regular books for black people needs to go out. An example is
Absolutely.
what happened with Black Panther. It sold out all over Europe. I mean, all the theater was filled because there is a need, and publishers are just not getting there. So that's just like me sharing, from other markets that the money issue can also be solved by going where there are other people who are willing to buy what they don't have already.
So I want to make sure we don't forget that black people are not the only people who buy black content. When Black Panther opened, I was at the ArcLight Theater in La Jolla. Not a lot of black people there, but the movie was on every single screen.
And I think that also, when you sit to do a piece of art or whatever that is, there are so many components that I believe that, in just going into the state, just into another region within your city and your county, and then your state, and then your national, and then your country, and then the international, and that can seem like a heavy lift. And I think that is, and to answer the other young lady, that's the challenge for me, is because I know that you need so much infrastructure, and not just that to the point where it's corporate, but a team in terms of really wanting to go all the way to the end, regardless if it's an international market, and then be able to because I tell Luana all the time, creatives in terms of micro thinking need to partner with a macro thinker, that I have the ability to go all the way to the end and then work your way out, work your way back. Because if you start from nothing without going to the end, what do you want at the end of the day? Well, I want to do this. I says, well, let's build it as if it's that, and then work your way back, because it's very hard to do that, but you need that particular team and support and foundation, and for someone to be able to create that infrastructure, and then sometimes be moving in concert with you while you're, doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I think Jordan Peele is also another good example of that, because his movies has reached so many people, and I think people just want unique and new stories right now. Like, that's what people are craving, especially in the publishing industry and books. there's a lot of call-outs for more Afrofuturistic style of books and different stories that aren't just, you know, based off the same medieval European narrative that we've seen time and time again. I've also heard a lot of different film agents, literary agents talk about how people want to see stuff from like around the world, you know. There's so many stories and so many different cultures that haven't even been touched on, and I think that's really what it's about. It's just a need for more interesting stories that we haven't seen before, new narratives, people who haven't had a chance to talk about their experiences and what they can bring to the table. And I've also had to I had a lot of conversations with authors about decolonizing our mindsets and how we tackle anti-colonial world building in our narratives, because, you know, westernized writing structure is very different from other places, and sometimes we tend to normalize it and think of it as this universal writing structure, when really the structure of writing differs from like across the world, that sometimes we don't even think about it. But personally, I find when I read a story and it's written in a way that's just so different, but I can tell that it's that author's experience, it's what they're coming from, that's what they know, that's their normal. And for me, it's just mind-blowing, inspiring, and I'd love to see more of that. And I think that's really what it's about.
So the question was, this was her question, right?
Well, that's what happens when you pay.
I know I'm the last one, but yeah, it changes. But yeah, your question was about marketing. Yes. And
Beyond local,
markets beyond local,
like international.
regarding stories. I don't know, we kind of get off to a different direction. But yeah, and you're looking for like who's our favorite?
Oh no, I was just emphasizing that when it comes to money, that you don't limit your markets to American business and world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. It's so important to keep your like, if you want to market to to other countries. You mean that's what you? All right. So yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to make sure. I think other countries crave, even like urban culture here. You know, they crave that. So I feel like that's marketable. So that's pretty much what I'm creating. You know, I plan to have my books shipped out that way, shipped all over the world, just because I want to appeal. I want, you know, other countries to get a little taste of that. And when it comes to marketing, you know, I use social media, anything possible to get my brand out, you know. So to start with it, you know, you have to run promotions. You have to pay for them. I re-up on my promotions every week. And then, you know, and sometimes you get shadow banned or you get blocked, you know, like that's another thing, censorship. You know, a lot of companies don't want, you know, they don't want to promote this, they don't want to help you. So then I'd have another roadblock.
I had a flyer that was using like graffiti lettering on the flyer, and it was actually for a art event, but the algorithms in social media were flagging the curvy letters as porn. And so I kept having to like respond to, no, this is not obscene content.
Oh yeah. And then let me just say this, you know, and I think that there is, you know, that there are services that are allowed to help you do that. And here we go again. I think that the advice, you know, did we do the full? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm using you as a holder, right? You know, I think that when we do things to bounce them off of another, you know, a think tank, you know, before we did the graffiti, you know, the graffiti letters, they're like, did we have a conversation about that, or did we just want to do that? And I think that support is really can, you know, stop us from, you know, making mistakes and, you know, little hurdles and quibbles and things of that nature.
So, creators can only create what they know. And this is in response to something you shared. And when I went to NYU to a global Black women's literary conference, one of the narratives was all of these women had graduated from prestigious universities all over the world and were never once asked to read a book written by a black woman. It was never required to do that. And so the writing style does not become their own. And so each creative has to make whatever it is you're creating your own, so it will have an authentic voice. And when it does, then it begins to transcend what you talked about in terms of a Western mentality in blackface or in brownface or whatever faces, been educated to think in a way that is not authentic to themselves. So I think that's very
So I'll say that I've learned that a big part of the process of creation, especially when you're trying to create content that's authentic to you, is a process of unlearning. Because there are rules that we have been taught or that we have created or assumed that limit our potential. And somebody told me something about unlimited potential. Unlimited potential.
Well, I know that just, I took storytelling, and the instructor made us read The Hero's Journey. I don't agree with it. It's so lame. It is so lame. Like, okay, so what if all of the mainstream movies follow a hero's journey? Okay, you have the hero, all right, and you have the, there's the hero, then there's the shapeshifter, and then you have the threshold guardian, and so on. All right. Yeah, there's those. But why can't we just throw all those in the trash? Why does every story have to end happy or good? Why can't we end it terribly, tragic? Not every story ends good. In fact, most of them don't. So I just feel like we should just throw out the rules and just tell it like it is. Just make up whatever. If you have be honest. I don't think the hero's journey I don't agree with it. And in fact, most of a lot of foreign films don't follow the hero's journey at all.
That's why I like them.
Right. That's, they don't follow it. I love them. I love, in fact, some of the best films have less dialogue and all cinematography.
So how many of you are tired of movies where within 5 minutes you know what the challenge is, who the hero is going to end up with, and how the story is going to end?
I actually think Squid Games does a good job of that's a good example of a story that's different, and so many people were drawn in by it. A lot of people say that the protagonist was kind of unlikable in a way. So I think that's very interesting how they break down plot beats in a different way that we're used to. So I think that's actually an example of what you were talking about.
And I think that that's what we can do, what you're saying, is be so much bolder with our honesty, because people are more resilient than we think they are. Their brains will adjust. Your brain is designed to mold itself around, your brain is supposed to wrinkle. It's supposed to make space for the capacity, and it will fold. It's a muscle, so it will adjust. And I think that we can just challenge each other. But, just in my whole contribution to news and to kind of, now, just like my latest headline, it is instead of just printing about the issue of trials, just the last trial and the sentencing, is now the crying game, But the point of the matter is for us to be honest, like you said, we can deal with things that are tragic, and we can deal with, and we also, the brain will find its own hero, regardless if it's finding it in the muck. And I think that is the is a good challenge for us.
Just to add to that, in the publishing industry, with books, fantasy books, literary hegemony is really bad. And personally, for me, I'm tired of the magic saving narrative. But I see it so many times. There's always a character, and then there's magic that needs to be saved, and the main character has that magic, and she has to go on this journey. So personally, I've been trying to encourage a lot more writers to like explore different writing structures, different plot beats. You know, why does the conclusion always have to be a happy ending? Kind of like what you guys were talking about, like the honesty, the grit of humanity. Whenever that's reflected, it's very relatable, and it can actually have a more lasting impact on people.
And let's take a step back. How many people in our society are currently crippled because they've consumed mass media that told them that the world is supposed to be a certain way when it's not that way, and they have a hard time with the cognitive dissonance that results from that difference?
I just want to say that is why so many people are having so much trouble living right now, because we act like COVID or racism, and this stuff has always been with us, but we pretended like it wasn't there, or we were lied to and told that it wasn't there. But people are hungry for how to live in the world, like the real world, and how to live in the, not the fantasy life, but how do I create like a real authentic life that I can be comfortable in, and that can only come with truth.
I've noticed the people who are thriving in this era are the people who have been able to embrace things as they are and grow from it. And the people that are having the hardest time are the people who want to get back to normal.
And without even remembering how bad that was.
And was it normal? So we're getting close to an hour and a half, and I know that we're keeping a couple of our panelists from being at their tables where they can make money. So, so I want to thank you all, and I want to ask, any of you have any last words you want to say? You're good? Okay, so I will tell you. Just
See you there.
for me, on the 22nd of February, the 28th, I'll be doing a panel on how to be a good co-conspirator and basically going beyond allyship. On the 19th of March, I'll be moderating a panel that's part of the Afrofuturism Festival at Carnegie Hall, being done at the Schoenberg, and it's part of the Black Feminist Future series. I encourage people who are interested in Afrofuturism to check out all of the different events at the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival. Many of them are free and remote, so you can just tap in.
Oh, sweet.
And on the 19th of March, I'm moderating a panel for the United Nations Conference on the Status of Women called Black Women and Black Futurity. And that'll be online too. And I usually put all my stuff on drluana.com.
Awesome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
With our honesty, because
It's like, you remember all the things they did to you? Yeah, that's not normal. And you deserve, and we all deserve better.
This coming year is maybe at a rec center in South San Diego or at the Jackie Robinson. Yes, it's always in San Diego. I'll be taking it to Los Angeles in the spring of next year, and then I may take it to Charlotte. I have one website that's AfroCon.net, and as I finalize things, I unplugged them so I couldn't figure out how to turn them off, and I didn't want more feedback. All right.